Bear cub was trapped under a fallen billboard. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning light danced through the pine trees of Whispering Pines, a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Olivia Bennett sat on her porch, cradling her 10-month-old daughter Lily in her arms. The little one's bright blue eyes took in the world with wonder, her tiny fingers reaching out to catch the sunbeams that filtered through the leaves. "Look at the trees, Lily," Olivia whispered, pointing toward the forest edge where birds fluttered between branches. "One day we'll explore them together." Lily gurgled with delight, her chubby cheeks dimpling as she smiled. Her curiosity seemed limitless, her eyes constantly tracking movement, her hands always reaching for new textures and objects. Even at her young age, she showed an unusual connection with nature, quieting instantly whenever a deer appeared at the forest edge or when birds sang their morning songs. The Bennetts had moved to Whispering Pines just 3 months ago, seeking peace after years in the city. Their cabin sat at the edge of civilization, the last house before wilderness took over. Behind their home stretched miles of untouched forest, home to deer, foxes, rabbits, and yes, bears. Thomas, Olivia's husband, had reinforced all their trash cans and installed proper food storage after the local ranger warned them about black bears in the area. "They usually avoid humans," the ranger had explained, "but they're curious creatures, especially when food might be involved." This particular morning, Thomas had left early for the town hardware store. An old billboard stood at the curve of the road leading to their property, a relic from decades past when the highway ran closer. The wooden structure advertised a motel that had closed 15 years ago, its paint peeling and supports slowly rotting. Thomas had mentioned to the town council several times that it needed to be taken down before it collapsed. Olivia placed Lily on her playmat on the porch, safely gated in so she couldn't crawl away. "Mommy needs to hang the laundry, sweet pea. You stay right here." She kissed her daughter's forehead and moved to the clothesline just steps away, keeping Lily in her sight. The wind picked up suddenly, rustling the trees with unusual force. Olivia glanced up at the darkening sky. A summer storm was moving in faster than the forecast had predicted. She hurried with the laundry, pinning sheets and clothes to the line as quickly as she could. A sound from the forest edge caught her attention, a soft whimpering cry that didn't belong to any bird. Olivia paused, straining to hear over the wind. There it was again, a pitiful, mewling sound that tugged at her heart. She turned to check on Lily, who had grown unnaturally still. The baby sat perfectly upright, her head tilted, listening intently to the same sound that had caught Olivia's attention. Their eyes met, and something passed between mother and daughter, a shared moment of recognition that something needed help. The cry came again, louder this time, followed by a sound that made Olivia's blood run cold, the unmistakable, low grunt of an adult bear. Her first instinct was to grab Lily and rush inside, but curiosity held her in place. Carefully, she walked to the edge of the yard where she could see down the sloping hill toward the road. What she saw made her gasp. The old billboard had finally surrendered to time and wind. It lay collapsed across the edge of the road, and beneath one corner, barely visible, was a small, dark shape moving feebly. A bear cub, no more than a few months old, was pinned under the structure, its cries growing weaker by the minute. 30 feet away, pacing anxiously, was what must be the mother bear, a full-grown black bear, her eyes fixed on her trapped baby. The massive creature let out another grunt, then tried to approach the billboard, only to back away nervously when a car slowed down to look at the scene. Olivia felt her heart racing. The cub was clearly in distress, but any human intervention would likely trigger the mother bear's protective instincts. She should call animal control, but her phone was inside and she didn't want to leave Lily alone even for a moment. She turned back to check on her daughter, and her heart stopped. The porch was empty. The baby gate was still latched, but Lily was gone. Lily! Olivia's scream tore through the air as panic seized her. Lily! Movement caught her eye, a small figure in a pink onesie, crawling determinedly down the gentle slope toward the fallen billboard. Toward the trapped bear cub. Toward the anxious mother bear. Somehow, impossibly, Lily had climbed over the baby gate and was making her way straight into danger. Time seemed to slow down as Olivia's maternal instincts kicked into overdrive. She sprinted down the slope, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The distance between her and Lily stretched like an endless chasm, even though it was only a few yards. The wind howled louder, whipping her hair across her face, obscuring her vision for precious seconds. "No, Lily, stop!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by a crack of thunder overhead. Dark clouds had gathered with unnatural speed, casting shadows across the land. Lily continued her determined crawl, moving with a speed and purpose that seemed impossible for a 10-month-old. She paused only once to look back at her mother. Her innocent blue eyes filled with something Olivia couldn't understand. A wisdom beyond her years. A strange certainty. The mother bear had noticed the movement. Her massive head swung toward the approaching baby, nostrils flaring as she caught the unfamiliar scent. She rose to her full height, nearly 6 feet tall, her powerful muscles tensing under glossy black fur. A warning growl rumbled from her throat, deep and primordial. 20 feet separated Lily from the bear. 15 feet, 10. Olivia felt as though her lungs would burst. She was still too far away. "Please God, no," she prayed, tears blurring her vision. She'd never reach her daughter in time. A flash of movement caught her eye. From the tree line emerged a figure, moving with surprising agility despite his limp. Old Man Jenkins, their reclusive neighbor whom Olivia had only met twice since moving in. The former forest ranger moved with purpose, positioning himself between the advancing baby and the increasingly agitated bear. "Stay back, Mrs. Bennet," he called without turning, his voice steady despite the danger. In his weathered hands, he held what looked like a small canister. Bear spray, Olivia realized. The mother bear huffed and pawed at the ground, clearly torn between protecting her trapped cub and defending against these strange humans invading her space. Her small eyes darted between Jenkins, Lily, and the whimpering cub under the billboard. Then, something unexpected happened. Another cry came from beyond the fallen billboard, higher-pitched, desperate. The mother bear's head jerked toward the sound, her attention divided. "There's another cub," Jenkins said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "That's why she's not attacking. She can't choose." Olivia finally reached Lily, scooping her up with trembling arms and clutching her to her chest. But instead of crying or struggling, Lily remained calm, her eyes fixed on the trapped bear cub with an unsettling intensity. "Get back to the house now," Jenkins ordered, never taking his eyes off the bear. "Call wildlife services. I'll keep her distracted." But Olivia couldn't move, because at that moment the strange tableau was interrupted by the roar of an approaching engine. Thomas's truck came barreling around the curve in the road, too fast for the conditions. He hadn't seen the fallen billboard, hadn't seen them standing there, hadn't seen the bear. "Thomas, stop!" Olivia screamed. The truck's tires squealed as Thomas slammed on the brakes, but the wet road offered no traction. The vehicle skidded, spinning wildly before crashing into the far end of the fallen billboard with a sickening crunch of metal and wood. The impact shifted the massive structure. The trapped cub let out a piercing cry as the weight pressed down harder. The mother bear roared in response, her indecision vanishing in an instant. She charged, not at Olivia and Lily, not at Jenkins, but at the truck that was harming her baby. Thomas sat dazed behind the wheel, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, unaware of the furious mother bear racing toward him. Jenkins moved with surprising speed for his age, running toward the bear, waving his arms and shouting to draw her attention away from the truck. "Hey, over here!" The distraction worked. The bear turned, redirecting her charge toward Jenkins. The old ranger stood his ground, bear spray raised and ready. But he was too close, with too little time to react. Just as collision seemed inevitable, the bear skidded to a halt, dirt and leaves spraying from beneath her powerful paws. She stood just feet from Jenkins, teeth bared, but didn't attack. Instead, she reared up again, roaring at the sky as if challenging the storm itself. Jenkins didn't waste the opportunity. He backed away slowly, spray still aimed at the bear. "She's confused," he called to Olivia. "Too many threats, too much happening. We need to give her space." Thunder cracked directly overhead, and the skies opened up. Rain poured down in blinding sheets, drenching them all in seconds. The mother bear dropped to all fours, shaking her massive head against the downpour. And then, cutting through the chaotic symphony of rain, wind, and thunder, came a sound that made everyone freeze. A soft, gentle cooing. Lily, still clutched in Olivia's arms, was making quiet, soothing noises, her tiny hand reaching out toward the frightened bear and her trapped cub. The sound was barely audible, yet somehow it carried, creating a bubble of calm in the storm's fury. The mother bear's aggressive stance softened almost imperceptibly. Her eyes, small and dark, fixed on the baby human with what looked like confusion. "Don't move," Jenkins breathed, his voice tense. "Something's happening." Lily continued her gentle cooing, the sound reminiscent of the bear cub's earlier cries, but softer, almost musical. To Olivia's astonishment, her daughter began to struggle in her arms, clearly wanting to be put down. "No, Lily," Olivia whispered, tightening her grip. But her daughter's face crumpled, preparing for a wail that would surely agitate the bear further. "Mrs. Bennet," Jenkins said softly, not taking his eyes off the bear. "I've worked with wildlife for 40 years. I've never seen anything like this, but your daughter, she's communicating somehow." "She's a baby. She can't even talk," Olivia hissed, but even as she said it, she felt the strange certainty in Lily's small body, saw the unnatural focus in her daughter's eyes. Before anyone could say another word, the second bear cub appeared, scrambling over the far side of the billboard. It was smaller than the trapped one, perhaps the runt of the litter. It approached its mother, then surprisingly turned and moved cautiously toward the humans, as if drawn by Lily's continuing coos. The mother bear grunted but made no move to stop her second cub. In that moment, the rain lessened slightly, and a patch of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, illuminating the strange scene like a spotlight on a stage. Thomas had managed to open his truck door, his face pale with shock as he took in the situation. "Olivia?" he called uncertainly, frozen in place. "Don't move," Jenkins warned him. "Just stay exactly where you are." The free cub had now come within 10 feet of Olivia and Lily, its small eyes curious rather than frightened. The mother bear huffed and pawed the ground, but still didn't charge. It was as if an invisible boundary had been established, a fragile truce in this most unexpected of encounters. Lily had stopped struggling and was watching the approaching cub with rapt attention. Then, to everyone's horror and amazement, she twisted in her mother's arms with such sudden force that Olivia nearly dropped her. "Lily!" Olivia gasped, but it was too late. Her daughter had squirmed free and tumbled to the ground. Before Olivia could scoop her up again, Lily had started crawling. Not away from danger, but straight toward the bear cub. Jenkins raised his bear spray, his weathered face tense. Thomas shouted from the truck. The mother bear took a step forward, her intentions unclear. But the free cub and the human baby continued moving toward each other, as if drawn by an invisible force that the adults could neither see nor understand. They met in the middle of the muddy ground. Two young lives from different worlds, face to face. What happened next would haunt the witnesses for years to come. Lily, sitting in the mud, reached out one tiny pink hand toward the bear cub. The wild animal, still young enough that its eyes held more curiosity than fear, stretched its neck forward, black nose twitching as it sniffed the strange creature before it. Their faces were inches apart, the human baby with wisps of blonde hair plastered to her head by rain, the bear cub with fur slick and shining in the strange mix of storm shadow and sunlight. "Don't move," Jenkins whispered again, his knuckles white around the bear spray canister. Any sudden movement could trigger the mother. Olivia stood frozen, every maternal instinct screaming at her to snatch her baby away. Yet some deeper wisdom held her in place. Thomas had stepped out of the truck but remained still, his face a mask of terror and disbelief. The free bear cub suddenly let out a small whimper, then did something astonishing. It placed one paw gently, almost hesitantly, on Lily's outstretched hand. The baby giggled, a sound so incongruously happy that it seemed to cut through the tension like a knife. The mother bear tilted her head, her massive body still tense but no longer poised to charge. The trapped cub continued to cry weakly from beneath the billboard, its strength clearly fading. Then Lily did something that made Olivia's heart nearly stop. She turned away from the free cub and began crawling determinedly toward the collapsed billboard where the other cub was trapped. "Lily, no!" Olivia couldn't help herself. She lunged forward, but Jenkins caught her arm with surprising strength. "Wait," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Just wait. Something's happening here that I can't explain." The mother bear huffed loudly, but made no move to intercept the crawling baby. The free cub trailed after Lily, as if they were already playmates on some important mission. Lily reached the edge of the billboard and stopped, her small hands pressing against the wood. She made a frustrated sound, then looked back at the adults with an expression that, impossibly, seemed to ask for help. "She wants us to move the billboard," Thomas said, his voice cracking with disbelief. "That's crazy," Olivia whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it was true. Something extraordinary was unfolding, something beyond rational explanation. Jenkins studied the structure with professional assessment. "The main weight is on that corner," he said, pointing. "If we can lift it just enough, the cub might be able to pull free." "Are you seriously suggesting?" Olivia began. "Look at your daughter," Jenkins interrupted. "Look at what's happening here. In 40 years of wildlife management, I've never seen anything like this. But right now, that cub is dying, and somehow your daughter knows it." Thomas moved forward slowly, his eyes never leaving the mother bear. "I have a jack in the truck," he said. "If we're careful." The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on Olivia. Here they were, in the middle of a storm, planning to rescue a bear cub while its potentially deadly mother watched, all because her infant daughter seemed to be orchestrating some impossible cross-species rescue mission. Yet, as Thomas carefully retrieved the jack from his truck and Jenkins positioned himself between them and the mother bear, Olivia felt a strange certainty settle over her. This was happening. This was meant to happen. "Stay with Lily," Thomas told her as he approached the billboard with the jack. "Keep her from getting under our feet." Olivia nodded and crouched near her daughter, who was still sitting by the billboard. One hand pressed against the wood, the other now resting on the free cub's head. The wild animal sat beside the human baby with unnatural calmness, both of them watching the adults work as if supervising. The mother bear paced nearby, huffing and grunting but making no move to attack. Her eyes tracked every movement, especially when Thomas positioned the jack under the heaviest part of the fallen billboard. "Easy," Jenkins murmured, speaking as much to the bear as to Thomas. "Easy does it." The metal creaked as Thomas began to pump the jack. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the corner of the billboard began to rise. The trapped cub's cries grew more urgent, a mixture of pain and hope. "A little more," Jenkins instructed, his experienced eye gauging the gap. "Just a few more inches." Rain continued to pour around them, creating rivers of mud that made the footing treacherous. Thomas slipped once, and the jack wavered, causing the billboard to shift dangerously. The mother bear roared, taking 2 threatening steps forward. "It's okay," Jenkins called out, his voice remarkably steady. "We're helping. We're helping your baby." Whether the bear understood his words or his tone, she stopped advancing, though her body remained tense, ready to charge if they made one wrong move. "There!" Thomas gasped as the jack reached its limit. The corner of the billboard was now raised about 8 inches off the ground. Enough space perhaps for a small bear cub to wriggle free. But the injured cub didn't move. It lay there, whimpering, either too hurt or too frightened to attempt escape. Lily made a distressed sound, her face scrunching up in an expression Olivia recognized. The face her daughter made when she was concentrating very hard on something. Then the free cub did something remarkable. It left Lily's side and approached the gap, nosing at its sibling through the small opening. It made soft grunting noises, almost like encouragement. "Come on, little one," Jenkins whispered to the trapped cub. "Your brother's showing you the way." As if in response to both its sibling and Jenkins' gentle urging, the trapped cub began to move, pushing with its back legs, squirming painfully toward freedom. Everyone held their breath as the small animal fought its way forward, inch by agonizing inch. Finally, with a sound that was half yelp and half cry of triumph, the cub pulled free of the billboard and collapsed on the muddy ground, its fur matted with dirt and what looked like blood from multiple scrapes and cuts. Thomas carefully released the jack, allowing the billboard to settle back to the ground with a dull thud. He backed away slowly, returning to Olivia's side. They watched as the free cub approached its injured sibling, nuzzling it gently. The mother bear approached her cubs, sniffing them thoroughly, paying special attention to the injured one's wounds. She licked the small animal carefully, her previous aggression completely replaced by maternal concern. "We should go now," Jenkins said quietly. "Give them space." But before anyone could move, the injured cub stumbled to its feet and, to everyone's astonishment, limped not toward its mother but toward Lily. Olivia tensed, ready to grab her daughter, but something in Jenkins' steady gaze made her hesitate. The old ranger wasn't afraid. He was witnessing something he'd never seen before, and despite the potential danger, he was allowing it to unfold. The injured cub stopped just in front of Lily, swaying slightly on unsteady legs. Blood seeped from a gash on its hind quarter, and one paw was clearly causing it pain when weight was placed on it. The baby and the cub regarded each other solemnly, as if communicating in some primal language lost to adults. Then Lily did something that made Olivia gasp. She reached up and touched her own forehead, then pointed to the sky, then back to the cub. The exact same gesture Olivia used when putting Lily to bed each night, telling her that the stars were watching over her. The injured cub made a soft whimpering sound, then turned and limped back to its mother and sibling. The mother bear gave one final look at the humans, a long, evaluating stare that seemed to penetrate to Olivia's very soul, before shepherding her cubs toward the forest edge. As the bears disappeared into the tree line, the strange spell that had held them all seemed to break. The rain suddenly felt colder, the wind harsher. Reality crashed back in waves of disbelief and delayed fear. "What just happened?" Thomas asked, his voice hollow with shock. "What did we just see?" Jenkins shook his head slowly, water dripping from his gray beard. "I don't know," he admitted. "In all my years, I just don't know." Olivia scooped Lily into her arms, checking her daughter frantically for any injuries. But Lily was perfectly fine. Not a scratch on her, just mud-covered and beginning to shiver slightly in the cold rain. "Let's get inside," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "We need to call someone. Wildlife services, a doctor, I don't know." "Who would believe us?" Jenkins asked quietly. "What would we even say?" He had a point. How could they explain what had just happened? That a 10-month-old baby had somehow communicated with wild bears. That she had orchestrated a rescue that should have been impossible. That predator and prey had coexisted in peaceful cooperation for those few miraculous minutes. Lightning flashed overhead, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm was intensifying again. "Come to our house," Olivia told Jenkins, "at least until the storm passes." The old man nodded gratefully, and the strange group made their way back up the slope to the Bennett home. Thomas's truck would have to wait. The front end was crumpled against the billboard, clearly not drivable. Inside, wrapped in warm towels, they sat in stunned silence around the kitchen table. Lily, seemingly unaffected by the ordeal, played contentedly with wooden blocks on a blanket spread across the floor. "She's always been different," Olivia finally said, watching her daughter. "Even as a newborn, she notices things other babies don't, responds to things." "There are old stories in these mountains," Jenkins said softly. "The native people who lived here long before us, they believed certain children were born with the ability to speak to animals. They called them whisper children. It was considered a powerful gift, a bridge between worlds." Thomas snorted skeptically, but his expression remained troubled. "That's just folklore." "Maybe," Jenkins conceded. "But what other explanation do you have for what we just saw?" Outside, the storm continued to rage, wind howling around the cabin's eaves. But inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of questions without answers, of possibilities that challenged everything they thought they knew about the natural world. Olivia watched her daughter playing, those chubby hands stacking blocks with surprising dexterity for her age. What else could Lily do? What other secrets did her innocent blue eyes hold? As if sensing her mother's gaze, Lily looked up and smiled. That same dimpled, guileless smile she'd always had. Yet now Olivia couldn't help but see something more behind it. A wisdom that shouldn't be there. A connection to something greater than themselves. The phone rang, startling them all. Thomas answered it, his voice still shaky as he explained to the caller that yes, the billboard had finally fallen, and yes, his truck had been damaged, but everyone was safe. "That was Sheriff Miller," he said after hanging up. "Someone drove by and saw the fallen billboard in my truck. They've called a tow truck and the sheriff is on his way to check things out." "What are we going to tell him?" Olivia asked, suddenly anxious. "About the bears, about Lily." Jenkins considered this, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. "Perhaps nothing," he said finally. Some things are better left as private miracles." Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but then glanced at Lily, who was now humming softly to herself, a tune none of them recognized. "Maybe you're right," he conceded. The doorbell rang 15 minutes later. Sheriff Miller stood on the porch, rain dripping from his uniform hat, notepad already in hand. Behind him, through the curtain of rain, they could see the tow truck's flashing lights as it prepared to deal with Thomas's damaged vehicle. "Everyone okay here?" the sheriff asked, stepping inside and removing his hat. "Quite a mess down there. That billboard's been an accident waiting to happen for years." "We're fine," Thomas assured him. "Just a bit shaken up." As the adults talked, Olivia noticed Lily crawling toward the window, pulling herself up to standing by, gripping the sill. Her daughter was staring intently out into the storm, toward the forest edge. Olivia moved to join her, peering through the rain-streaked glass. For a moment she saw nothing but sheets of water and thrashing tree branches. Then a movement caught her eye. 3 dark shapes at the tree line, partially obscured by undergrowth. The mother bear and her cubs hadn't gone far. They were watching the house. As Olivia stared in disbelief, the mother bear raised her head, meeting Olivia's gaze across the distance. There was something in that look, an acknowledgement, a connection, that sent shivers down Olivia's spine. Lily pressed her small palm against the glass and made that soft cooing sound again. In response, the mother bear nudged her cubs gently, and all 3 disappeared into the forest depths. "Mrs. Bennett?" Sheriff Miller's voice broke through her trance. "I was asking if you saw how the accident happened?" Olivia turned back to the room, where Thomas and Jenkins were carefully recounting a sanitized version of events that mentioned the storm and the billboard, but conveniently left out any interaction with wildlife. "I was focused on Lily," she said truthfully. "Everything else was just a blur." The sheriff nodded sympathetically and jotted something in his notebook. As he continued his questioning, Olivia's mind raced with the implications of what had happened, and what might still be to come. Because one thing was becoming increasingly clear. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. In the days that followed, life in the Bennett household attempted to return to normal, but normal had taken on a new meaning. The fallen billboard was cleared away by county workers, Thomas's truck was repaired at the local garage, and the storm damage was cleaned up. On the surface, everything was returning to order, but beneath that veneer of normalcy, powerful undercurrents were shifting their lives in unexpected directions. Olivia found herself watching Lily with new eyes, scrutinizing her daughter's behavior for signs of the inexplicable connection they'd witnessed. The baby seemed unchanged, still the happy, curious child she'd always been. She babbled, played with her toys, and delighted in simple pleasures like bath time and watching butterflies in the garden. Yet there were moments, fleeting, easily dismissed, when Olivia caught glimpses of something different. The way Lily would sometimes stop mid-play and tilt her head, listening to sounds no one else could hear. The way birds would gather on the porch railing when she was nearby. The way the neighbor's normally skittish cat now approached her without hesitation, rubbing against her tiny legs with unusual affection. Thomas, practical and logic-driven, had retreated into denial. It was just a strange coincidence, he insisted whenever Olivia tried to discuss what had happened. We were all stressed. The storm was making everything seem more dramatic than it was. Jenkins, with his whisper children nonsense, he's just an old man who spent too much time alone in the woods, But Olivia had seen the wonder in Thomas's eyes when the injured cub approached their daughter. She'd felt his hand tighten around hers in that moment of inexplicable magic. He might deny it with his words, but some part of him had been forever changed by what they'd witnessed. Old Man Jenkins became a regular visitor to their home, initially under the pretense of checking on Thomas's recovery from the minor injuries he'd sustained in the crash. But Olivia knew the real reason. The old ranger was drawn to Lily, fascinated by the child who had done what he, with all his decades of wildlife experience, could never have accomplished. "Have you seen them again?" he asked one afternoon, sipping coffee on their porch while Lily napped inside. "The bears?" Olivia hesitated. She hadn't told anyone, not even Thomas, about the strange occurrences of the past week. The distinctive paw prints she'd found at the edge of their property each morning, the low huffing sounds she sometimes heard at night, too deliberate to be just the wind. "No," she lied, then immediately regretted it. If anyone would understand, it would be Jenkins. "Actually, I think they've been nearby, watching." The old man nodded, unsurprised. "Bears have excellent memories," he said, "especially when it comes to those who've helped them or harmed them. But why would they stay close? Isn't that dangerous for them? For us?" Jenkins stared out at the forest edge. His faded blue eyes narrowed in thought. "There's something you should know about black bears in this region," he said slowly. "About 15 years ago, before you moved here, there was a bear research program run through the university. They were studying communication patterns, intelligence levels, some quite advanced stuff." Olivia felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. "What kind of research?" "The kind that pushes boundaries," Jenkins replied. "There were rumors, nothing confirmed, mind you, that they were experimenting with ways to enhance the bear's cognitive abilities, trying to establish more complex communication pathways." "Are you saying these might not be normal bears?" Jenkins shrugged. "The program was shut down suddenly, ethical concerns, but some of the test subjects were released back into the wild. They were tagged, but tags can be lost or removed." He paused. "The mother bear we encountered. I noticed a small scar behind her left ear. Could be nothing. Could be where a tag was once attached." The implications were staggering. Olivia looked through the window at her sleeping daughter. "And you think these bears might be drawn to Lily because—" "I don't know," Jenkins admitted. "But enhanced intelligence, combined with whatever natural gift your daughter seems to possess, it could create a unique connection." Before Olivia could respond, her phone rang. It was Caroline Walsh, the local veterinarian and wildlife rehabilitator. "Olivia, I hope I'm not interrupting anything," Caroline said when Olivia answered. "I'm calling because something unusual happened today. A hiker brought in an injured fox kit they found near the old logging road, and I thought, well, this is going to sound strange, but I thought Lily might want to see it." "A fox?" Olivia repeated, confused. "Why would Lily—" Sheriff Miller mentioned something about how calm Lily was during that whole Billboard incident, Caroline explained, her voice hesitant. "And Jenkins has been talking. Not details, just that your daughter seems to have a way with animals. I've got this fox kit that's refusing food, growing weaker by the hour. I've tried everything, and I just thought—" "We'll be there in 20 minutes, Olivia found herself saying, surprising even herself with the swift decision. After hanging up, she turned to Jenkins, who had overheard the conversation. "Do you think this is wise?" she asked. The old ranger considered this for a moment. "I think," he said carefully, "that gifts aren't given without purpose." Caroline Walsh's veterinary clinic sat on the outskirts of town, a modest building with an attached rehabilitation facility for local wildlife. When Olivia arrived with Lily and Jenkins, they found Caroline waiting anxiously by the door. "Thank you for coming," the vet said, leading them inside. "I know this must seem bizarre, but I'm at my wit's end with this little one." She guided them to a quiet room at the back of the facility, where a small cage sat on an examination table. Inside, curled into a miserable ball of red-orange fur, was a fox kit no larger than a house cat. Its breathing was labored, and it didn't react when Caroline gently opened the cage door. "He was found trapped in an old fishing net by the river," she explained. "No visible injuries beyond some minor abrasions, but he won't eat or drink. Blood work shows no infection or toxins. It's as if he's just given up." Lily, secure in Olivia's arms, had gone completely still. Her usual babbling ceased as she stared intently at the suffering animal. "Can I?" Olivia swallowed hard, still uncertain about what they were doing. "Can I bring her closer?" Caroline nodded, stepping back to give them space. Jenkins watched from the doorway, his weathered face unreadable. Olivia approached the table slowly, holding Lily so she could see into the cage. "This is a baby fox, Lily," she said softly. "He's very sick." For a long moment, nothing happened. The fox kit remained motionless, eyes closed, seemingly unaware of their presence. Lily simply stared, unusually solemn for a child her age. Then, without warning, Lily made that same soft cooing sound they had heard during the bear encounter. It was gentle, almost musical, nothing like her usual baby noises. The fox's ear twitched. Lily squirmed in Olivia's arms, clearly wanting to be set down on the table next to the cage. After a hesitant glance at Caroline, who nodded encouragingly, Olivia carefully placed her daughter on the table, keeping a firm hand on her back for support. Lily immediately placed her small palms against the cage bars. The fox kit's eyes opened, bright amber irises that fixed directly on the human baby with startling intensity. What followed was one of the strangest interactions Olivia had ever witnessed. Lily made a series of soft sounds. Not words, not quite animal noises, but something in between. The fox kit raised its head, ear flicking back and forth as if listening to something deeply important. Then, with visible effort, the small animal pulled itself to its feet. It wobbled unsteadily toward Lily, nose twitching as it caught her scent. When it reached the cage bars, it pressed its muzzle against Lily's fingers. "I don't believe it," Caroline whispered from behind them. "He hasn't moved voluntarily since he was brought in." Lily giggled, a sound of pure childish delight that seemed to break the solemn spell. She pointed to a small dish of food in the corner of the cage, then back at the fox, making an encouraging sound. To everyone's astonishment, the fox kit turned and approached the food dish. After sniffing it cautiously, it began to eat, small, tentative bites at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. "That's impossible," Caroline breathed. "I've tried everything to get him to eat. Different foods, different presentations, nothing worked." Jenkins stepped forward, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Not impossible," he corrected gently. "Just beyond our understanding." As they watched the fox kit eat, Olivia felt a complex mixture of emotions wash over her. Wonder at what her daughter could do, fear of what it might mean for their future, and a deep, instinctive knowledge that their lives had been set on a path from which there was no returning. News travels fast in small towns. By the end of the week, whispers about Lily Bennett and her unusual way with animals had spread throughout Whispering Pines. Most dismissed it as exaggeration or coincidence. A cute baby who happened to be present when a fox decided to eat, nothing more. But others were more curious, especially those who had their own stories of strange animal behavior in the surrounding forests. Thomas was furious when he discovered Olivia had taken Lily to the veterinary clinic. "This has to stop," he insisted that night after their daughter was asleep. "You're encouraging people to think there's something strange about our child." "Maybe there is something strange about her," Olivia shot back. "Would that be so terrible? To be special, to have a gift?" "Gifts come with prices," Thomas said, his voice dropping to a pained whisper. "Do you want her to grow up as the freak of Whispering Pines, the weird animal girl? Because that's where this is heading." Olivia had no answer for that. She understood his fears. They mirrored her own in many ways. But she also couldn't deny what she had seen, what she continued to see in small ways every day. That night, unable to sleep, she stood by Lily's crib watching her daughter's peaceful slumber. Outside, rain pattered gently against the windows, a soft counterpoint to the child's breathing. A subtle movement in the yard caught her attention. Olivia moved to the window and peered out into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing but rain-slicked grass and the shadowy outline of trees. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the scene, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing at the edge of their yard, barely visible in the darkness, was the mother bear. She was alone this time, her cubs nowhere to be seen. She stood perfectly still, front paws resting on the low stone wall that marked the property boundary, her gaze fixed directly on Lily's window. The massive animal wasn't threatening, wasn't attempting to approach the house. She was simply watching, waiting. In that moment, Olivia understood with perfect clarity that Jenkins had been right. This was just the beginning of something far larger than they could comprehend. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt an odd sense of calm. Whatever connection existed between her daughter and the natural world around them, whatever strange path lay ahead, they would face it together. As Olivia watched, the bear lowered herself to all fours and melted back into the forest darkness. But Olivia knew she wasn't really gone. She was simply giving them time. Time to prepare for whatever was coming next. 3 days later, disaster struck. Lily had been fussy all morning, refusing her breakfast and crying inconsolably whenever Olivia put her down. By noon, her forehead was hot to the touch, her cheeks flushed with fever. "I'm taking her to Dr. Michael's," Olivia told Thomas over the phone. He was at work in town, supervising a construction project. "Something's not right." "I'll meet you there," Thomas replied immediately, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Michaels, the town's pediatrician for over 30 years, examined Lily with careful thoroughness while she whimpered in Olivia's arms. "High fever, 103.2, he noted, frowning. "Elevated heart rate, some respiratory distress. How long has she been like this?" "It came on suddenly," Olivia explained. "She was fine yesterday, just a little quieter than usual." The doctor listened to Lily's chest, his expression growing more concerned. "I'm hearing some congestion in her lungs. Could be the beginning of pneumonia, but it's progressing unusually fast." He looked up at Olivia and Thomas, who had arrived midway through the examination. "I'd like to admit her to the hospital in Riverdale for observation and tests. It's probably just a severe respiratory infection, but with babies this young, we don't take chances." Thomas went pale. "Hospital? Is it that serious?" "Probably just a precaution, doctor," Michaels assured them, though his eyes betrayed his concern. "But the faster we get her started on IV antibiotics, the better." Everything after that became a blur of activity. The 20-minute drive to Riverdale Hospital, the admission paperwork, the pediatric specialists consulting in hushed voices outside Lily's room. By evening, their daughter was in a hospital bed, tiny arms connected to IV lines, her breathing labored despite the oxygen support. "We're running more tests," the hospital pediatrician, Dr. Rivera, told them. "Her condition is stable, but concerning." The infection in her lungs is aggressive, and she's not responding to the initial antibiotics as well as we'd hoped. Olivia sat by Lily's bedside through the night, holding her small hand, singing softly to her when she stirred in restless sleep. Thomas paced the room like a caged animal, making coffee runs and badgering nurses for updates whenever they came to check Lily's vitals. By morning, instead of improving, Lily's condition had deteriorated further. Her oxygen levels kept dropping despite increased support, and her fever remained stubbornly high. "We're moving her to the PICU," Dr. Rivera informed them grimly. "The latest cultures show she's fighting a rare form of bacterial pneumonia, one that's resistant to standard antibiotics. We're consulting with specialists at Children's Hospital in the city." Olivia felt as though she were trapped in a nightmare. Just days ago, they had been marveling at Lily's strange gift, her miraculous connection with wild animals. Now, they faced the very real possibility of losing her to an illness that had appeared from nowhere and was overwhelming her small body with frightening speed. As they followed Lily's bed to the pediatric intensive care unit, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jenkins. "Is Lily all right? The animals are behaving strangely. Bears spotted near town. Fox kit at Caroline's escaped its cage. Something's happening." Olivia showed the message to Thomas, whose face hardened. "More of this nonsense," he hissed. "Our daughter is fighting for her life, and he's still fixated on his supernatural animal theories." But even as he dismissed it, a cold tendril of something like certainty wound its way through Olivia's heart. She thought of the mother bear standing watch outside their home, of the fox kit responding to Lily's gentle sounds, of all the small signs they'd been seeing since the Billboard incident. "It's connected," she whispered, too quietly for Thomas to hear. "Somehow, it's all connected." 2 days later, Lily's condition had become critical. The specialized antibiotics weren't working quickly enough, and her little body was exhausting itself trying to fight the infection. The doctors had been forced to intubate her, the ventilator now breathing for her, while they desperately tried to identify a more effective treatment. Olivia and Thomas barely left her side, taking turns to catch brief moments of restless sleep in the uncomfortable visitor chairs. Friends from town brought food they couldn't eat and offered prayers they couldn't feel. The waiting, the beeping of monitors, the hushed voices of medical staff. It all blended into a surreal backdrop to their mounting despair. "If I lose her," Olivia found herself telling Jenkins during a rare phone call, while Thomas was speaking with the doctors, "I don't think I can survive it." "You won't lose her," the old ranger said with surprising conviction. "Trust what you've seen, Olivia. Trust what you know about your daughter." "What I know isn't helping her now," Olivia replied bitterly. "What good is some mystical connection to animals when she's dying in a hospital bed?" Jenkins was silent for a long moment. "Have you considered," he finally said, "that the connection might work both ways?" "What do you mean?" "The bears haven't left the area. They're circling closer to town every night. Caroline's other rescue animals are becoming agitated. Even pets in town are behaving oddly. It's as if..." "As if what?" Olivia prompted when he didn't continue. "As if they're responding to Lily's distress," Jenkins finished quietly. "As if they're trying to reach her the way she reached them." The idea was absurd, impossible, yet it resonated with something deep inside Olivia. A truth she had been sensing but couldn't articulate. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the steady rhythm of Lily's ventilator. "I don't know exactly," Jenkins admitted. "But I think Lily needs to be home, not in a hospital surrounded by machines and chemicals." She needs to be where the connection is strongest. She'll die without medical support, Olivia protested, though even as she said it, she glanced at the machines that were failing to heal her daughter. Maybe, Jenkins said, or maybe there's another kind of healing that these doctors can't provide. After hanging up, Olivia sat in a troubled silence, watching her daughter's too-still form beneath the hospital blankets. Jenkins' suggestion was dangerous, possibly delusional. Taking Lily out of the hospital in her condition would be considered reckless endangerment, might even result in Olivia losing custody if authorities became involved. Yet, as another team of specialists entered the room, discussing yet another experimental treatment approach while barely acknowledging Lily as more than a collection of symptoms and readings, something hardened in Olivia's resolve. When Thomas returned, his face gray with exhaustion and worry, she pulled him into the hallway. "I want to take her home," she said without preamble. Thomas stared at her in disbelief. "What? Are you out of your mind? She's on a ventilator, Olivia." "They're not helping her," Olivia insisted, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "She's getting worse here, not better. I think she needs to be where it happened, where she connected with them." Comprehension dawned in Thomas's tired eyes, followed swiftly by anger. Absolutely not. I'm not letting you risk our daughter's life based on some crazy theory about her talking to animals. Then what's your plan? Olivia challenged him. Watch her decline day by day while doctors try increasingly desperate treatments? She's dying, Thomas. Right now, in this hospital, she's dying. Thomas flinched as if struck. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, looking back through the door at their daughter's small form, surrounded by medical technology. Even if you're right, which is a massive, irrational if, how could we possibly move her? She needs the ventilator, the medication. We'll figure it out, Olivia said, reaching for his hand. But I know, Thomas, that she doesn't belong here. For a long moment they stood in tense silence, the hospital bustling around them with its endless rhythm of urgency and routine. Then, almost imperceptibly, Thomas nodded. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it right. No half measures that put her at even greater risk. We talk to the doctors about home care options, portable equipment, nurse visits. We make a plan that gives her the best possible chance, regardless of whatever else you believe is happening. It wasn't full acceptance of what Olivia suspected, but it was a willingness to act, and that was enough for now. What neither of them could have anticipated was how quickly events would overtake their careful plans. Because that night, as they were consulting with reluctant doctors about the possibility of home-based intensive care, the wilderness itself seemed to make its own decision. And nothing in Whispering Pines would ever be the same again. That night, as Olivia dozed fitfully in the chair beside Lily's hospital bed, a sound pulled her from her troubled dreams, a faint tapping at the window. She blinked, disoriented in the dim light of the hospital room. Thomas had gone to get coffee, leaving her alone with their daughter and the steady, mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. The tapping came again, more insistent. Olivia rose and moved cautiously to the window. Their room was on the 3rd floor, overlooking a small courtyard garden. Nothing should be able to reach the window from outside. Yet, when she pulled back the curtain, she found herself staring into familiar dark eyes. Perched impossibly on the narrow ledge outside was the fox kit from Caroline's clinic, its red fur silvered by moonlight, its small paws pressing against the glass. Olivia gasped, stumbling backward. The fox wasn't alone. On the courtyard lawn below, barely visible in the shadows beyond the security lights, stood the mother bear with her 2 cubs. Around them, like an assembled delegation, were other forest creatures. A pair of raccoons, several deer, an owl perched on a nearby branch, and more animals half hidden in the darkness. This was impossible. Wild animals didn't approach hospitals in town, didn't gather together in such unnatural groupings. Yet Olivia couldn't deny what she was seeing. A congregation of the wilderness, assembled beneath her daughter's window. Just as the shock was registering, the monitors connected to Lily began to sound alarms. Her oxygen levels were dropping precipitously, her heart rate becoming erratic. Olivia rushed back to her side as a nurse hurried into the room, quickly followed by the on-call doctor. "She's going into respiratory failure," the doctor said tersely, already calling for additional support. "We need to get her stabilized." More medical staff flooded the room, working frantically around Lily's tiny form. Olivia found herself pushed toward the wall, watching helplessly as they fought to save her daughter. Thomas appeared in the doorway, his face draining of color as he took in the scene. "What's happening?" he demanded, his coffee forgotten in his hand. The doctor spared him only the briefest glance. "Her condition is deteriorating rapidly. We're doing everything we can." Through a gap in the medical team, Olivia caught a glimpse of Lily's face. Despite the crisis, despite the failing vital signs and the hands working urgently to save her daughter's expression was oddly peaceful. Her eyes were open, gazing not at the doctors or the ceiling, but toward the window, toward the impossible gathering outside. In that moment, Olivia knew with unshakable certainty what needed to be done. She pushed her way to Thomas and grabbed his arm. "We need to take her outside," she said, her voice low but fervent. "Right now." "What? They're trying to save her life." "They can't," Olivia interrupted. "Look at the monitors, Thomas. Listen to what they're saying. She's slipping away despite everything they're doing." Thomas stared at her, conflict written plainly across his features. Then his eyes drifted to the window, where the fox kit still perched, watching with unnatural intensity. "The animals," he whispered, recognition dawning. "They're really here." Olivia nodded. "They've come for her. Not to harm her, to help her. I don't understand it, but I know it's true." For a suspended moment, Thomas stood frozen in indecision. Then something shifted in his eyes, the last barrier of disbelief crumbling away. "How do we do this?" he asked simply. Olivia squeezed his hand gratefully. "Follow my lead." She approached the medical team, her voice taking on a calm authority that belied the wild pounding of her heart. "We're taking our daughter outside. Now." The doctor looked up at her, incredulous. "Mrs. Bennett, that's impossible. She's on a ventilator. Her condition is critical." "It's her only chance," Thomas interjected, moving to stand beside Olivia. "We're her parents and we're making this decision." "This is highly irregular," the doctor protested. "I must strongly advise against—" "We're not asking for permission," Olivia said quietly. "We're informing you of what's happening. You can help us do this safely or we'll do it ourselves." Something in her tone, or perhaps something in the strange intensity of the moment, stopped further objections. The doctor exchanged glances with the other staff, then sighed heavily. "If you insist on this unorthodox approach, we can arrange a temporary portable ventilator and monitor setup. But I want it on record that this is against medical advice." "Noted," Thomas said tersely. "How quickly can it be arranged?" 20 minutes minimum." Olivia glanced at the window where the fox kit remained vigilant. "We don't have 20 minutes. We need to go now." Before the doctor could respond, the hospital room lights flickered, then went out entirely. Emergency lights came on immediately, casting everything in a dim, blue-tinged glow. From the hallway came sounds of confusion as the power outage affected the entire floor. "Backup generators should kick in momentarily," a nurse said, already checking Lily's vital equipment. but the generators didn't engage. As seconds stretched into a minute, the hospital remained in emergency lighting only. The ventilator, running on its battery backup, continued functioning, but the reprieve would be temporary. "We need to move her now," the doctor said with new urgency. "If power isn't restored soon, we'll need to relocate critical patients to the East Wing where the generators are functioning." It was the opportunity Olivia had been hoping for. "We'll take her to the garden courtyard," she suggested. "It's close. We can keep her on the portable equipment, and if anything happens, we're still at the hospital." The doctor hesitated, then nodded curtly. 5 minutes, no more, and at the first sign of further deterioration, we bring her back inside immediately. Everything moved quickly after that. A portable ventilator was connected to Lily's breathing tube, monitoring equipment was switched to battery packs, and her small body was carefully transferred to a gurney. Under the watchful eyes of the medical team, they wheeled her toward the elevator, which, without power, wasn't operational. "Service stairs," a nurse suggested, pointing down the hall. "They lead directly to the courtyard level." The descent was tense and careful. Medical staff guiding the gurney down the stairs with practiced precision despite the unusual circumstances. Olivia walked alongside, holding Lily's small hand, whispering reassurances. Thomas followed close behind, his expression a mixture of fear and desperate hope. When they finally emerged into the courtyard garden, the night air felt electric against their skin. The space was empty of people, most hospital staff busy dealing with the power outage. But it wasn't empty of presence. The animals had gathered closer, emerging from the shadows at the edges of the courtyard. The mother bear stood barely 20 feet away, her cubs at her side. The fox kit had somehow made its way down from the window ledge and now sat at the edge of the garden path. Other creatures, raccoons, opossums, a family of rabbits, even a majestic stag with impressive antlers, had joined the strange assembly. The medical staff froze at the sight, one nurse stifling a scream behind her hand. "Don't make any sudden movements," the doctor whispered tensely. "There must be some issue in the forest driving them into town. We need to get back inside immediately." "No," Olivia said firmly. "This is why we came outside. They're here for Lily." Before anyone could stop her, she began to wheel the gurney forward, moving slowly but deliberately toward the center of the courtyard. Thomas moved with her, placing his body protectively between the approaching animals and their daughter. "Mrs. Bennett, this is madness," the doctor hissed, but made no move to physically stop them. Olivia ignored him, focusing entirely on her daughter. Lily's eyes were open now, more alert than they had been in days despite her critical condition. She was looking at the assembled animals with what could only be described as recognition. When they reached the center of the courtyard, Olivia stopped the gurney. The monitoring equipment showed Lily's vital signs were still dangerously weak, but had stabilized somewhat in the open air. "Now what?" Thomas whispered, looking around at the circle of wild creatures that had drawn closer, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly focused on Lily. "I don't know," Olivia admitted, "but she does." As if responding to her mother's words, Lily's hand twitched, lifting slightly from the bedding. It was the first voluntary movement she had made in days. Her fingers reached out, trembling with effort, toward the mother bear. And then, to the astonishment of everyone present, the massive predator approached. She moved slowly, deliberately, ignoring the horrified gasps of the medical staff. Thomas tensed but didn't intervene, some deeper wisdom holding him back. The bear stopped beside the gurney, her great head level with Lily's tiny form. For a breathless moment, human and animal regarded each other. The child tethered to life by machines, the wild creature bound by instincts older than civilization. Then the bear did something that defied all natural explanation. She lowered her head and gently, with infinite care, touched her nose to Lily's outstretched hand. A visible shudder passed through Lily's body. The monitors registered a sudden spike in her heart rate, followed by a drop that had the doctor lurching forward in alarm. But Olivia held up her hand, stopping him. "Wait," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just wait." The bear lifted her muzzle and released a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl of aggression, but something more complex, almost musical in its cadence. Around the courtyard, the other animals responded, each adding their own voice to a growing chorus of wild sound. The fox kit's high yip, the stag's resonant grunt, the owl's haunting call, and more, blending into something that was neither music nor language, but contained elements of both. As the strange harmony filled the night air, Lily's monitors began to show remarkable changes. Her oxygen levels, critically low just minutes before, started to rise. Her heart rate strengthened and stabilized. Color returned to her pale cheeks. "This is impossible," the doctor murmured, staring at the readings in disbelief. "Medically impossible." One by one, the animals approached the gurney, each making brief, gentle contact with some part of Lily's small body. A fox paw against her leg, a deer's soft muzzle touching her arm, a raccoon's delicate fingers brushing her shoulder. With each touch, her vital signs improved, strength visibly flowing back into her fragile form. The mother bear remained closest, her powerful presence seemingly anchoring the extraordinary encounter. Her cubs approached cautiously, sniffing at the strange human contraptions but focusing primarily on Lily herself. Then, in a moment that would be seared into the memories of everyone present, Lily took a gasping breath and began to fight against the ventilator tube, her lungs suddenly strong enough to breathe on their own. The doctor rushed forward, medical training overriding his shock at the surrounding circumstances. "She's breathing independently," he confirmed after a quick assessment. "We need to extubate her." With swift, practiced movements, he removed the breathing tube, replacing it with a simple oxygen mask. Lily's first unassisted breaths were ragged but steadied quickly. Her eyes, bright and alert now, moved from animal to animal, an expression of profound connection on her small face. Olivia felt tears streaming down her cheeks. Thomas stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, watching the miracle unfold with stunned wonder. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Olivia replied truthfully, "but it's real." The strange communion continued for nearly an hour. The medical staff, after their initial fear subsided, watched in professional fascination as Lily's condition improved beyond what days of their most advanced treatments had been able to accomplish. The animals maintained their vigil, some coming and going, but the core group, the bear family and the fox kit, remaining constant. Gradually, the wild chorus faded. The animals began to withdraw, slipping away one by one into the surrounding darkness. The fox kit was the last to leave, pausing at the edge of the courtyard to look back at Lily with what seemed like satisfaction before vanishing into the night. Only then did the hospital lights flicker back on, power restored as mysteriously as it had failed. In the sudden artificial brightness, the doctor approached Lily's gurney, checking her vital signs with an expression of professional disbelief. "Her fever is gone," he said, shaking his head. "Lung sounds clear. Oxygen levels normal. It's as if the infection simply disappeared." He looked at Olivia and Thomas with bewildered eyes. "I've been practicing medicine for 23 years, and I have no explanation for what just happened here." Lily, free of the ventilator and the worst of the medical equipment, reached up and touched her mother's tear-streaked face, then smiled. that same dimpled, innocent smile that had always been hers, yet now seemed to contain something more, something ancient and wise beyond her years.